Welcome to Diplomatic Passport, where we give you your daily weekday updates on COVID-19 and current affairs issues, answering the questions that matter the most to you with regards coronavirus, of course, also known as COVID-19. We haven't been bringing you the program over the past 2 days, and I'm sure you know why. It's because here at Zimpaper's television network, we were hosting the 2-day event that was the Say What and a Swedish embassy-sponsored National Universities Quiz Challenge. Of course, the winners there were Midlands State University, and going forward, I will be hosting them in the studio today. However, on today's show, I am joined in the studio, and I'm going to be addressing stigma and discrimination against COVID-19 patients amongst a host of all other things. And I've got two special guests in the studio, and I've also got two who will be joining me on the line, and I will be introducing them to you soon. But as always, let's start by taking a look at Zimbabwe's COVID-19 cases as of the latest data released by the Ministry of Health and Childcare. So Zimbabwe now has 7,576 confirmed cases of COVID-19. Of course, these include 224 deaths and 5,783 recoveries, which puts the national recovery rate at 76%. 45 new cases have been recorded in the last 24 hours, and these are 44 local transmission cases and a returnee from Namibia. Harare, of course, is still the epicenter with 3,204 cases, followed by Bulawayo, which now has 1,368 cases of COVID-19. Now, the current COVID-19 outbreak has provoked social stigma and discriminatory behavior against individuals who have COVID-19 and people who display symptoms associated with the virus. Now, stigma can lead to unwarranted social isolation of groups, which might drive people to hide the illness to avoid, of course, discrimination. And this prevents people from seeking healthcare immediately. Now, to help me unpack this issue of stigma against people with COVID-19 amongst a host of other issues, I'm joined in the studio by Decide Mabumbo from the Zimbabwe Resilience Building Fund, which is currently the running that anti-stigma campaign. And renowned musician Amara Brown, of course, she has joined us on a number of causes and leads from the front. And I'm also going to be joined on the line by health journalist Tandega Ndlovu from Bulawayo, and Joyce, who is a COVID-19 survivor who suffered the hardest wrath of stigma. And she will be sharing with us her experience. Now, I'd like to welcome you, the two of you, into the studio. Amara, always a pleasure to have you back in your studio. And Decide, thank you for joining us here. Perhaps I'll start with you and ask what your organization is, what it stands for, and this anti-stigma campaign that you're currently running.
Okay, thank you, Robert, and for the invitation, and thank you to the viewers. I'm coming from my name is Decide Mabumbo. I'm coming from the Zimbabwe Resilience Building Fund. So this is sort of a multi-stakeholder and multi-partner pool of resources stationed at the UNDP. And we are supporting organizations, our partners in 18 districts in terms of fighting the risk of COVID-19, as well as other resilience building initiatives, such as the provision of adequate water and sanitation, the provision of COVID PPE materials, cash grants to youth in some clubs which have been formed, and also we are also giving cash transfers to households who are actually struggling to subsist during these trying COVID times. So we are actually looking at COVID-19 not only as the hazard that is there at the moment, but we are trying to look at resilience building as a broader project looking at multi-levels of hazards in these communities.
And we spoke of stigma, and that's one of the hazards. Tell us how that has impacted your work, and of course you've had a front row seat to seeing that stigma. How have people been handling COVID-19 in societies relating to that?
Yes, thank you for that. I think stigma and discrimination is a significant issue. You find that when someone contracts the virus, in some cases they are not well accepted in the community. They struggle to access health facilities and also to integrate back into the community. But what we are saying is that there are also other services that these people require. For example, they have competition in terms of accessing water. They also need to access jobs. They also need incomes. They also need to go to school and so forth. So we are taking stigma and discrimination in the broader perspective. People who are struggling to and being discriminated against in terms of COVID-19. But we are also looking at other elements which makes them to be more resilient and have the capacity to bounce back from adversity at both the individual and also at the household level.
And Amar, you have taken up this cause and of course partnered with this this initiative. What has spurred you on? What led to you saying, I want to be a part of this drive? Where are you in this matrix?
I think I went through a different kind of journey in terms of the reality of it. In one respect, because I love to travel, I'm used to my freedom. It really just felt in the beginning like something that was over there, and that changed very quickly. I actually lost someone near and dear, a friend of ours, somebody who was highly respected in the industry, Zororo Makamba. And it was just so absurd. It was riveting. It hit me in a way where I was completely shocked, and suddenly it was so real. Part and parcel of my job is not just about entertaining people, it's so much more about connecting with people. In this particular time, obviously when we started, we couldn't anticipate the extent to how long it would be. I could have stayed in South Africa. I was really on the fence in terms of how to go about this process, and the more I found out about it, the more overwhelmed I found myself feeling, and I quickly had to center myself. Because of who I am, I cannot fall apart.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I can't fall apart in all of this madness. I need to get it together. What can I do? That was the question I began to ask myself. What can I do? And if I'm not feeling particularly great, I'm not sharing my energy across the board, because I have 500,000 followers online just waiting to hear what I'm going to say. So I've been trying in many variations to preach peace, tranquility, introspection, control of yourself, and get in touch with yourself. Use this period of time as more of an opportunity than a crisis. So really just helping certain people condition how they need to see the situation, because it's either fear is going to get you, or you're going to be more in the know, and then you're going to feel more aware of what to do and what not to do and handle it, because the stress alone is just not worth it.
And I will tell you, it seemed like something so distant as well to me. And of course, we got that aha moment because when we lost Zororo, his age, it defined almost everything. You know, we had these myths that black people, old people, and all that nonsense
black
was
people
quashed.
can't catch it.
Absolutely.
I remember that, and I was like, really?
And it just happened like that. But I'll also tell you, we also had an initiative that we ran here on ZTN that got me traveling more within the country to deal with issues around COVID-19. And one of the people that I came across and actually made this look real to me is actually on the line with us. Today, I will not reveal her identity. I will refer to her as Joyce, but she's become a very close friend, a personal close friend, and I was absolutely elated to know that she's going to join us today. Joyce, welcome to the program. It's been a while, and I'm absolutely glad that you could join us today.
Thank you, Robbie. I'm happy to be joining you.
See, nice and warm, Robbie, she calls me. That's how close we've become. Because when we arrived at your home there in Bulawayo, there had been a lot that had happened around you, had there not? Because there had even been stories that you had deliberately gone around trying to spread COVID-19. There was a lot of stigma around you, and you had to deal with a lot of issues over and above the fact that you had this disease that you didn't know how that story would end.
Oh yes, the stigma was so much, and the stories were also killing us, increasing the stress that we were facing. Yes, you're very correct.
And I want to bring that other reality that it wasn't just you, it was members of your family. I think 5 of you, if I'm not mistaken, 2 of your children. It also, and that's when we also came, to the realization that even young children can get COVID-19. At that time, people didn't know whether, infants can get COVID-19. And we came face to face with that reality. As a mother, looking at your child and not knowing whether your child will survive that crisis, never mind yourself, what did that do to you as a person, as a personality, as a mother?
As a mother, it was killing me inside, whereby instead of me being the strength to my children, I felt I was being the weak point to them, because my youngest is 3, the other one was 10 by that time, and 16-year-old, me being 34, and my mom being 52. Now, looking at the 3-year-old, she was so innocent. She doesn't even know what's happening. All these rapid response coming, testing. She just doesn't know what's happening. The number of times she had nightmares throughout April, March, June. Now they're really reducing. It was tearing me apart.
And when you're talking about that, just to interject, when you talked about that trauma that the young one suffered, I remember you telling me about how the rapid response team would come time and time again to test you, and it's very intrusive, it's very painful, and your infant had to go through that. And even after you guys recovered, she couldn't get to the gate, and she didn't want to hear a car come to the gate because she was scared that those people had come back again. And that sort of trauma, what did that do to you, to your family, and especially to her?
It has really torn us apart, because, my daughter was the type of person who was welcoming to everyone. Up to date, you can as well leave it. It's not usual that you leave a child. Usually children cry to go with their parents. But with my daughter, up to date, you will say bye, and she says bye. When a car comes, a visitor comes, she rather run away. You will find her under the bed. You tell her, no, it's not the doctor, because she referred to them as doctors. You tell her, it's not the doctor who's come to attend us. The doctor is not going to come again and inject us. She doesn't yet understand that. Fine with the older sister. The older sister just doesn't want to go to the shops. Not that she's stubborn. She's a good girl. But you would understand the fact that when we went to the shops, people will really look at us with this eye, and some of them will ask unnecessary questions. Some of them will call us as if COVID is from our house. How are you with your COVID? So how's the COVID? You understand why the child doesn't want to go to the shops.
And then there are some things that are very basic that we take for granted, or that we took for granted. Partying, you turned 34 on the day that I actually visited you. It was your birthday, and yet you were going through this trauma, and you were saying you don't know whether you're going to be alive, you don't know whether to celebrate your birthday. Can you tell us, us and the viewers out there, what that feeling was on that particular day when we came around for your birthday?
Okay, to be honest, I think you lightened that day for us, because you make us laugh. But when you left, we came to the reality of, okay, what's next? Are we really going to survive? Remember, by that time, there was no survivor. All there was infected people, and the number of deaths, I think, were 3 by that time. So we were not sure, are we going to survive this? We never really celebrated it. We ended up sleeping the whole day. The moment you left, you slept. And it's so funny, because all of us celebrated our birthdays while on quarantine. The next one was my mother's birthday. And
when Mom celebrated her birthday, coincidentally, we'd come back again to visit you guys.
Yes. You were really coming for our birthdays. At the same time, as you found us, that was already late, and you could tell that we're still in our normal routine. There was no celebrating. I can't remember saying happy birthday to anyone. It was a birthday that never existed. If there was a way of not counting that birthday, then I would still call myself a year younger. But it's just a time. That's how we were celebrating. We have to just face the reality that we celebrated our birthday while COVID positive.
And possibly just one last thing before we let you go back to your normal routine in this new normal. I want to look at, for example, when we came round, you talked about the plans that you had made, because you had planned for a life after COVID, but you had not planned that you were going to be alive after COVID. What did you do? What were those measures that you took to say, well, we're definitely going to die, and we've got, you know, we've got chickens, we've got this, we've got that, and you had actually made those plans. Can you tell our viewers about that very dark decision you guys had taken?
Okay. First of all, like, we don't know about the COVID. We believe that the COVID doesn't affect people 4 years and below. So to us, before we told we're positive, when my mom was the first to be tested positive, when she tested positive, then we knew that there were high chances that the others were going to be positive, but not the 4-year-old, the 3-year-old. Now, we started sharing valued things, like the chickens we told you about. We called the person we bought the chickens from, and we told them, okay, when we die, please come and take the chickens so that they don't suffer. Then with the child, I called my mother-in-law. I said, as we're going to be positive, I know we're going to be COVID positive. Can you come and take the child? I know we're going to die very soon. So at least come and take the child. My mother, thank God, she refused. She refused. She said, well, let's wait until you die. And then relatives, we told them, okay, you can take this, you can take this. The other things we destroyed. Things that we thought if they were important to us, but they're not important to the next person, we destroyed everything. We reduced the number of clothes that we have so that we can just have a limit. Since our clothes, no one would want our clothes. They have to be burned. That was our assumption. We bent them down. The pots, we reduced some, and old pots, we threw them away. We really threw a lot of things away because of that death thought that we had.
Joyce, thank you so much for joining me, and thank you so much for sharing that story. I know there are millions of things we can talk about because we've shared a lot more experiences. We've talked a lot about a lot of things, but those are the very profound things that people would actually now get a clearer picture of what you had to go through. And of course, my love to the family.
Thank you very much.
Amara, that giving up. Somebody gave up on life.
That was so crazy to listen to. You can hear, just from a human perspective, just empathy. She was ready to go. And, you know, for any mother, I'm a mother. Your worst nightmare is to bury your child. And so at this point, I imagine her going through these thoughts where she's like, please let me go before my children, or let me die as opposed to my children going. That's crazy. And at a time like that, you would hope that your family and your community supports you and is praying for you and is sensitive to what you're going through. And it's just wild that that's just not what's happening. How is your COVID as if she owns it? She doesn't own it, you know, and the reality is that all of us are prone. Anybody can pick it up anywhere. And it's not her fault necessarily. Such a simple thing could have happened that literally changed the fabric of her entire family's life. Not just today, not just this year, for life. Who knows what that little girl is going through, and now the counseling she's going to have to go through. We had similar cases when HIV happened. 30, 40 years ago, they had people quarantined. like you were gonna catch it.
Absolutely.
You know, but that was lack of information. That was lack of knowledge. I remember watching documentaries about teachers, for instance, who were HIV positive in the office, for instance, and nobody wanted to use the same cup. Ridiculous, ridiculous from where I'm sitting, but I was informed. So the point is two things here. This is not an entirely new situation. We're in Southern Africa. We have some of the highest HIV and AIDS cases in the world. That's a fact. So being in communities that experience stigma, we should already know what this looks like. Absolutely. We should already know how to handle this, and we should be doing better. Inform yourself. Inform yourself and be sensitive, you know, and for people who have experienced it, be mindful that there is counseling you're going to need. Absolutely. Your entire family needs to go through that. It's not the breaking point. It's not the make or break of your life and your experience and what makes you as amazing as you are. You beat it. Absolutely. I'm so happy for you. Absolutely. Well done. I'm so proud of you and for being that person, that parent in the home who tried.
Absolutely.
You know.
And I think, Decide, you guys come across stories like this a lot because you're on the front lines. What does that story do to you? And if you've confronted such issues, how have you helped communities deal with that plethora of issues that they've had that were at least touched on by Joyce?
Okay, thanks. I think from the story I picked the two things. The first one is on risk knowledge. You find even in terms of international disaster risk reduction frameworks, the Sendai framework, the first component is understanding disaster risk. For us to be able to fight a risk or to be able to come out of a disaster, we need to understand the risk involved. So through our resilience building efforts led by the Resilience Knowledge Hub, we're actually promoting risk communication. So a number of over 100,000 materials have been developed, including videos and cartoons, to actually disseminate to communities so that they understand what COVID-19 is and how it can be defeated and prevented. Then the second issue that I also picked has to do with institutions. How can people or someone in a community, how can they be able to be supported by the institutions around them? I'm talking here of someone in the village, for example. There are village development committees chaired by the village heads. There are ward development committees chaired by the councillor. There are veterinary extension departments, agricultural extension, because they can be discriminated against accessing some of those services. Oh, yes. Maybe they may not be able to have their cattle, going to the dipping sessions and so forth. So we are working with various institutions through the Department of Civil Protection, at the national level as well as the sub-national level. So the Department of Civil Protection, they have a multi-hazard or multi-stakeholder tool where they gather all these government departments at the sub-national level, and then they discuss issues to do with COVID-19, veterinary services, agricultural extension, environmental management, environmental health, and so forth. So we support through technical and financial resources so that these institutions, they are aware of COVID-19 and they can also disseminate that to the bigger community so that people with COVID-19 can be accepted and also being assisted by the community.
And talking of that communication, we heard there from Joyce that even mainstream media, the newspapers, even discriminated against them, and there was a bit of misinformation because of a lack of knowledge back then. And journalists are key in making sure that the society is well informed and informed correctly. And one of the people who's leading from the front in making sure that we deal with issues of coronavirus in ethical means is Thandeka Moyo, who's joining me from Bulawayo. She writes for the Chronicle and she's an advocate journalist. Thank you for joining us and welcome to Diplomatic Passport.
Greetings to our viewers at home. I trust everyone is safe and, we're washing hands and staying safe from COVID-19. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Now, you heard the story we were talking about when we were talking to Joyce there, also from Bulawayo, and she mentioned how in the beginning there were actually mainstream news stories that discriminated against them and had stories like that they're going around and trying to spread COVID-19. How has the situation changed in the media? How has information become more correct? How have we become more ethical over time from the time when we started reporting on COVID-19?
I think it would be fair for us to first admit that COVID was a new phenomenon. And, when Joyce and her family tested positive, then we had little or maybe no knowledge on COVID-19. So I would think maybe that's the reason why some of my colleagues covered them in such a manner which led to trauma, which led, to the discrimination that the family faced in the community in Bulawayo and even in social media platforms. But I think with time, as Amara said, I think we've given ourselves a chance to read about COVID, to follow what is being publicized, even to follow reports from the World Health Organization, so that we have a better understanding of what it is. And I think with time, we are trying as journalists to write the correct story and to use terms that do not end up making people feel bad, making people feel like they are going to die, as Joyce was saying earlier on. So I think, yes, we did face that challenge, but many of us were not in sync with what COVID really is. But I think, things are improving, and we are trying our level best to make sure that we don't spread stigma in our coverage of COVID-19 stories.
And dealing with issues around advocacy journalism, I know you're leading from the front there. We've learned a lot of lessons from HIV and AIDS. We've learned the terminology. And on the other hand, we know that sensationalism actually sells. And we always have that term, if it bleeds, it leads. It's a front page story. How have you spoken to your colleagues to sensitize them and so that they know that there's a lot of harm that can come from sensationalism? Because while you're informed and while you're leading from the front and you know when you're writing your personal copy what to say, how to say it, there are a lot more in the newsroom who would not be privy to the correct terms or the correct language. What has been your personal role as an advocate journalist to make sure that people learn and to be ethical and people learn terminology and to be sensitive?
I think it's good to note that we are humans before we are journalists or we are artists and, whatnot. So I think it's also possible to write an appealing story that sells, an appealing story that trends without necessarily spreading stigma. So I try and encourage, or I try and concentrate on the human interest side of the story. So when you're covering COVID, instead of maybe discriminating or using terms that, foster stigma against Joyce and the family, I would think it would be better to write a story about the family, how they are feeling, the emotions, the trauma that they go through. I heard they talk about how the daughter, hides under the bed every time, there's a knock in their home. I think it's the kind of stories that are appealing, would sell, but are not necessarily sensational. So I try and do the right thing. I try and conscientize my colleagues, when we talk and when we discuss some of these story angles, so that, we make sure that in covering these stories, we do not do any harm. We fight stigma and make sure that our fellow human beings, our fellow Zimbabweans who have suffered, who have contracted COVID, are celebrated. I think we should celebrate them. I think to me, they are heroes, so they deserve to be celebrated, and hence they deserve all the positive coverage in terms of the stories that we do on COVID-19.
And Thandeka Moyo, being the ethical journalist that you are and spreading the message in an ethical way, I think we also should celebrate you because you are a communications hero. Thank you so much for joining me and joining this panel on Diplomatic Passport today as we discuss issues around COVID-19.
Thank you very much.
So, very important, very measured. I know, Amara, you have had brushes with the media, and you're probably thinking, oh my goodness, I wish every journalist was like Thandeka. But you are a journalist in your own way. Because when you speak to the people, you speak. You're a voice that people listen to, and you have to be measured and you have to be informed. And you are just looking in the mirror when you're listening to Thandeka speaking.
Yeah, absolutely. In one regard, I think it was twofold, because from where Joyce was sitting, I can relate. I know what that's like. In certain regards, and from where Thandeka was sitting, I can also understand. Because the size of the team that you have may not necessarily think, write, work the same way you do or with the same integrity. I think many years ago I came across the phrase that says the media are not mediators. That's a very scary thing to wrap your head around, because ideally media, the word media, is derivative, so to speak. And just understanding the kind of responsibility that you're holding in this regard. For instance, how she said the human aspect is what will appeal to people, and just understanding the lines to draw within that particular circumstance. I think it's so important for us as media bodies in many regards, because I think every artist is a media channel of sorts, but there are so many of us, influence, etc., that we do know influences. People are paying attention. What can we share? And in this process, she's privy to what's going on in terms of the good news. Who survived? What are they going through? What's the way forward? And communicating that there is survival on the other side. It's not a death sentence. We're not saying stop being concerned. Right? There's a delicate balance, and we have to be mindful about what we're communicating, because when you scream fear, fear resonates in a different place for people. It will make people react in a certain way. Have you noticed how aggressive people have become on the road lately? Huh? You've noticed, right? The driving is not the same. People are a little bit edgy. You know, I went through my own experience a couple of months ago where I just got this extreme backlash for the weirdest thing, in my opinion. And I thought I had to decide at that point, should I explain this circumstance for them? But I could just see how angry, and I could feel, and I had to overstand. I had to look from an eagle eye perspective and be like, all right, Amar, remove yourself from this attack. And you can see people are upset right now. What are they really upset about? Is it you that they're upset about? No, they're not upset about you. They're experiencing a number of things that are saying, fear this, everything's going wrong. We don't know when we're going to make money. We don't know when the borders are going to open. We don't know anything. We don't know how our kids are going to finish their exams. I'm having to deal with my 15-year-old in the house in Form 3, guys. Mana, please, I beg. You know, and parents are now, like, you're having to become a teacher in the home. There's all kinds of pressures that we didn't have to deal with. However, again, perspective. Teaching people perspective, removing the fear aspect and just saying, all right, everything's going to be fine. Let's be responsible about how we're going about this. Let's talk about the people who have survived, because we're always talking about the people that died.
Absolutely.
Or the people that have contracted it. I don't even know enough survivor stories. And so I've removed myself from social media in one regard because of the amount of negative information that is being fed through my screen. I know myself enough to know how much energy I'm receiving. But does the person at home know that every time they're going on social media, or every time they turn on a device, how much energy they are infusing into their own spirits? And fear can travel. Recklessness can travel. Ignorance can travel, because you see somebody else having fun, drinking a beer, and then the next person at home thinks, guys, let's have a braai. What's the big deal? And I'm listening, I'm like, are these people crazy? Like, no, I have a small circle of people that I trust, and that is it. Don't come over. I don't want to see you here.
Especially if you see the whistle lady from South Africa, the one who dances playing her whistle, and you think, oh my goodness, I think I need to party. and that's what social media is doing.
You miss certain things. But at the same time, again, it's your attitude towards what you're experiencing. So in the home now, I'm turning up the music while we're cooking, we're dancing in the kitchen, we're playing cards, we're talking, we're reading books next to each other. When we're researching stuff, I'm like, oh, look what I found out, So the social aspect, I find, in this period, we've become closer as units. And you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but look at it from that regard. I know people who have said, I would have never known my father the way that I know him now if this hadn't happened. We need to look at the positives that are coming out of this situation.
Well, my wife, turns out my wife is a really nice person.
Yeah! My wife is great. Even alone time, some people you're by yourself. When I came back from South Africa, I had 21 days alone. Let me tell you, I realized I am so much fun. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so great. I've never been alone in my whole life. It's always been family. And all of a sudden, I had so much time for introspection and my spirituality, and all the books that I had bought that I didn't have time to read unless I was on a plane because my phone is on flight mode. I'm looking at it from a different perspective. I'm looking at all the situations and I'm just like, okay, all right, so even if the shows are not making this amount of money, I know my revenue stream can come from this place, that place, that place. Also, since I'm not moving around so much, my costs of living have actually decreased in certain ways. It's quite nice. I miss restaurants, but hey, guess what? I can cook.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I can cook, you know.
And decide. I'm also looking at the fact that we've lived with COVID-19 for a while now, and we started with is it really there? Then boom, we lost people, and then that reality sunk in, and then we were scared, and we had this moment of fear. But these relaxations that are coming, and there's something fresh yesterday, intercity travel, tourism, are we not getting complacent? What are you seeing when you're going into the communities now? And are we not facing another risk of a very, very severe avalanche that will get a medical tsunami from what you're seeing from the communities that you're interacting with? And what are you doing as an organization to keep that message alive that people should stay safe?
Well, thanks for that. Yeah, I think from the various updates that we are getting in terms of COVID regulations, even some health experts are also warning that there might be a surge in the number of cases because of this. People tend to relax when regulations are relaxed. But in the communities that we are working, we are really trying to mainstream the issue of COVID risk in the activities which people do every day. So we are saying when people go to a grinding mill, we have champions who could be youth or women or some people in the local community who can change the language and the terms that you are referring to. So if we can have these champions at all the levels, and if they can disseminate the right information and the right materials, then we might be able to fight the risk of another resurgence. So there's no need to relax in terms of communication, and I am confident, I think, in the communities that we are working, that our partners are actually scaling up some of the efforts in terms of fighting this risk.
And speaking of champions who fight from the fore and are well informed, here on Diplomatic Passport we've had Dr. Sacrifice Chirisa, and he's always been giving us advice time and time again, and these are bites that we share with you, our viewers, time and time again, and we've learned a lot from him. However, he's also a COVID-19 survivor. He spoke to us earlier, and these are his views, and he's speaking mostly also looking at issues to do with stigma and discrimination.
That I really want to speak about is the stigma. The reason why I volunteered and to come out, being a mental health practitioner and being a doctor, I really wanted to come out and say, look, I have had COVID, and it was not my fault. I didn't do anything. There's nobody to blame. And there are a lot of people that are going to have COVID, and they need to be treated like people. People were saying, I've had some people calling me, being called COVID centers, epicenters. Should we hold them with gloves and things like that? But I'm saying that discrimination and stigmatization of somebody who have suffered or going through COVID is bad. At that point, all you need is support, all you need is care, all you need to know that somebody cares about you instead of being stigmatized. And so that's why I came out, so that we try to break the stigma.
Dr. Sacrifice Chirisa there saying we should break the stigma. That's the underlying message. And it's, certainly we should all try to be a part of those people that break the stigma and spread correct information and news. Over to you, Decide. Your organization, perhaps people just joined us midway. What's your organization? What do you do? And how can people who actually need help and need your services get in touch with you?
Okay, thanks. We are working in 18 districts, and we can easily go to our website on zrbf.co.zw, and we are working with a 7 group of organizations which you can also get in touch with, which are scattered around the districts. And we are working also through the Ministry of Agriculture and Lands and Water Resources. and we are being supported through the various donors. And I would also like to take this opportunity to thank the European Union, the Department of International Development from UK, the Embassy of Sweden, for actually supporting our programs. Yeah.
And what's your message to people out there who may still be scared, who may still think will be stigmatized if I just show these that I've got these symptoms, and may want to hide? And because I'm sure you're seeing a lot of that, people saying, well, I don't want to get tested, or fearing because of issues around stigma and discrimination. What is your advice to people out there, people at home who are faced with such situations?
Okay, thanks. I think if there's an opportunity for someone really to get tested and to know their status, I think like what Amara also said during the HIV period, that there was this stigma of people, having HIV and then being discriminated against. So I think for now, it seems in general the acceptance is now, getting into the communities, and people are really accepting and getting to know and understand what COVID-19 is. That is the most important factor, that the majority of the people where we are working, they seem to understand what COVID-19 is. But there are still areas where you find that the myth around COVID-19 still exists. So what I can say for now is we really need to keep disseminating the right information, using the right languages, and if possible, people should be able to access testing services, and also to seek support from organizations and institutions around them, and also continue to access other services, because sometimes someone is just suffering alone in the house without being able to access other services. So we are really trying to look at resilience as a broader issue, and in a broader perspective at both the individual, family, and the community level.
And we've got a traveler here, because what you were bemoaning is something that I also, being grounded, knowing, and sometimes you don't even have the budget to fly out of the country, but just being told that you cannot go, whether you get the money or not, that's a whole different trauma in itself.
Yeah, look.
And what has that done to you?
Look, in one regard, I tell you something. At some point in my journey as a human being, I had to look at the world and say the entire place is my home. Really just taking ownership of that, just that first moment, because once you realize that, you start to look at travel as more just the experience of various cultures, this the extension of home, and losing that liberty says, okay, instead of going out, go in. Again, instead of spending time searching for what's outside, search inside. You'd be surprised at the amazing things that you find. And that, for me, is the most powerful thing that has come out of this entire experience, the kind of growth I've had the time to have. I remember in January, my doctor was just like, you're in great health, but you need to stop stressing, bring your stress levels down. And I was like, he's just like, your job is madness. And he's like, that's what's giving you these slight difficulties. And if you could just release that. And I couldn't figure out how I was going to do it. And boom, like a miracle, it was like, now you have to slow down. Now you have to take your time. And so I, again, looked at it as, all right, opportunity. How will I handle this? And I'm grateful. In producing this album right now, I'm having a very different, because I'm watching humans, I'm watching you guys. I'm looking to you guys for certain understandings and just really taking ownership of what is my role in your life without me fabricating my experience. Do you get what I'm saying, of what I'm communicating? How am I nurturing you still in this period? Or how can I come out of this period and give you a story or show you an example that will still inspire you for years to come? So much of the situation is how you are looking at things from your eyes. You need a positive perspective, and even if you can't travel right now, I'm kind of itching because I thought, oh, I wish I could kind of travel more in Zimbabwe. But you know what? And all sorts of things are like popping in my head, like, you know what, next time I think I'm just going to drop in Kadoma or something, you know what I'm saying? just because I can. I'm now like having like different plans about how I want to experience my travel, and the reasons why I'm traveling have changed. Do you get what I'm saying? Now I know when I'm going forward, I'm just like, actually, I am going to travel for the fun of it. I don't have to go there to make money. I don't have to go there to make money. I can actually just experience the place and the people in a different way, because now I have to sit behind my computer and witness the world, quote unquote, unravel. And I've had to make a decision as a human being. You know, even when I released Glow in the Dark, Ubuntu, I was literally like, I wanted this song. It had nothing to do with anything that was happening at the time. It was Cook Off Zimbabwe, being launched on Netflix, and the song was a soundtrack, and we said, let's shoot a music video. And all of a sudden, when it was time, that message was so relevant, and my core fan base understood what I was trying to say. So again, I'm just saying to everybody at home, man, just be responsible in your humanity, and dig deep. And
being responsible, there's before we wrap up, there's another section of people who we absolutely used to love, but we're being discriminated against now. Having a returning resident. Aunties coming from South Africa, from the United Kingdom, from Dubai, and we would all flock to the airport and we want to see them. And now,
no.
Yeah, nobody wants to see Auntie. Nobody wants to host Auntie.
It's okay. Listen, can Auntie just spend 14 days in quarantine, please? Self-isolation. Thank you, Auntie, so much. I did the same thing. I came from Joburg. I went straight into a house I rented, and I was like, that's it, I'm by myself, guys. Deuces. I did the responsible thing, and when it was time, I got to hug my family, and everything moves as normal. Treat it as it is. Treat it as it is.
And what are you saying to communities that, because you're also in rural communities, you're in communities that have even people who probably would jump the border, or people who, a lot of returning residents, and there's that fear. What is your message to them, and how do you help them cope?
Yeah, I think, thanks for that. In terms of in the areas where we are working in the 18 districts, we are working with the local civil protection units there, where you find that at the sort of district level, through the Ministry of Health and other stakeholders, there are isolation facilities, there are quarantine facilities and so forth, which we also support through provision of COVID-19 PPE materials. So I think those who are coming probably should use the formal channels and get help, because sometimes using the informal channels, they end up getting to the communities and they perpetuate this risk. So I think if they come through the formal structures, they are likely to get the appropriate assistance. And
before we close, I just want you to quickly go through your website address for those who want to get in touch with you. Where can they try and get in touch with you?
Okay, thanks. www.zetarabf.co.zw. That's where you can find the Zetara Zimbabwe Resilience Building Fund project. It's in 18 districts, and it's housed within UNDP, and it's supporting 7 groups of partners.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Amara, what's your message to Zimbabweans before we wrap up with regards COVID-19? And of course, what can they look forward to from you? Because I know your creative juices have been working. You've had time to introspect, you know, to overstand them when they get nasty at you, and to know, you know what, you guys are angry, you're not angry at me. It's fine.
Other things.
Yeah, do that. And you know, what's that message? And your handles, you're still active on your social media, I hope. Or you're just watching us, because you did say you were watching us.
I'm dabbling.
Yeah. So where can we get, what's your message, and where can people follow you?
My message to you is use this time to experience your version of joy. It isn't every day. I think a lot of us were so caught up with the rat race. I think the system is designed in a way where all you're worried about is the next paycheck. I think in this process, you've realized that I love being at home, I love my family, I love myself, and truly soak it up. This is not going to come anytime soon again. Use it as an opportunity. That's my message. Use
love my
it
couch
as
too.
a beautiful.
I love my couch.
You know.
The relationship we've formed. I'm thinking of buying a ring.
Oh my God.
And on social media, where do people get you?
Oh, at Amara Brown on Instagram at Amara Brown Fans on Facebook. I'm on Twitter, but y'all know I don't tweet.
No,
Y'all
absolutely.
know I don't tweet.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for joining us today, and thanks to our partners for supporting Diplomatic Passport today here as we have this as a watershed event. Of course, we've gone more than 100 episodes. That's how long we've had COVID-19, giving you your daily, weekday updates. But keep your contributions coming to my Twitter handle. I tweet here and there at Zimrobbie, ZIMROBBIE, and my email address, robinkundiwa@gmail.com. So from me, Robin Kundiwa, from these amazing guests that I have here, and my lovely guest Joyce from Bulawayo, who joined me by phone, and Tandega Moyo, the beloved. We love you. Thank you so much for joining us. And to the rest of you from Zim Papers Television Network, I'll see you tomorrow. Stay at home, stay safe, and have a great night.